Welcome back to another episode of Palisade Radio. I'm your host, Karema Mutlu, and on today's show, we welcome Andrew O'Donnell, who's the Managing Director of Supercharged Stocks. How are you today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. It's a great time to be alive. Pretty exciting. It's great to chat with you, Karema.
Let's begin by going over your background and how you got involved within the markets. I understand you started working at Meryll Lynch as a broker, so talk to us about those early days and when you moved into what you're doing today.
Yeah, like I was fortunate. Meryll Lynch was probably the most exciting time as a learning curve, as a steep learning curve. I had always been interested in the markets. You know, I was in high school. I was part of the stock market club. I liked that. I loved how markets worked. I understood early, because I was fairly good at math too, that math was just a language, and that the interaction of all those things was pretty interesting. So going through school and everything else, when I got to Meryll, they have an intensive program there, and you kind of learn what's real and what's just not real in the books. And it was a real blessing and a real eye opener to be involved with that. And that was a steep learning curve, but that set me, straight pretty well, and started to target focus on how to look at stocks, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
Well, let's go over your thesis for owning gold, Andrew. I understand you have no interest in trading it. So what factors do you look at to keep you invested within gold? Do you look at central bank buying or the actions of the Fed? And for a lot of younger investors, gold still seems something that isn't very sexy or worth investing in. So what's been your experience of talking to younger investors?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a trader. The way I look at it is that I can't beat an investment banking desk. There's no chance. Or a hedge fund or family office. There's no way. Never mind trying to beat an AI algorithm created by NASA engineers. I'm not going to be able to time those small moves. It's just not going to be possible for me. So now there are people that can. That's great, but I'm not one of them. So I look at mitigating my risk by building in or out of long-term positions. So I need a big long-term fundamental look at things. And with gold, I will look at not necessarily what people are saying, as I do in most things in life, but what are people actually doing? So seeing the actions of the Fed, or seeing China buying more gold, or Russia buying more gold, Poland repatriating gold. I mean, all of these countries doing a lot of action of buying gold and repatriating it and picking it up, yet at the same time, a more media story of not a lot of interest, except for the last year. So like anything, I look to see what people are actually doing rather than what they're talking about, because often, a bank, even if you're their client, might have an alternative motive for telling you what they're up to, and that's one of the things that I always kind of focus on with way I look at things is by critical thinking. I think there's a big miss right today with critical thinking in regards to just news in general, but also investment news is trying to understand, and this was through a lot of hard lessons at Meryll and whatnot. Why is this information being told to me? Where does the information come from? Who is it? Is it credible? All of those questions, although exhausting, need to be evaluated and looked at. And also jumping back to way back at Meryll, if you had come to talk to me about gold, I mean, I would have yawned, walked out the room, and just laughed. I was 30 years old. I'd have no interest. And we had a couple of gold bugs. And I just, my brain was focused only on technology. That was all the excitement. And, I don't blame a young person right now that's exciting, and I think we see this social shift with, say, Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies and whatnot, of this disillusionment with trust in society and economy and finance, is that naturally should go immediately to gold. There should be, a giant surge. But because of technology, crypto was there to catch a lot of it. Now, I think there's a space for crypto, but I don't see it as being anything where it needs to be. The gold needs to be, promoted to some extent to young people so they can see it is going to go up. I mean, as much as people say that it's old and whatnot, it doesn't matter. History repeats itself. It constantly does. And every time there's always those voices out there that say, this time is different. It's not. It constantly does. It just changes a little bit. Whether you take our current ideological, cultural, political system, it looks very similar to many, many times throughout history. And yet you'll hear all throughout the news that, no, this time it's different. It's not. So gold is going to have its day in the sun. It started. And I think that the more we have younger people, and there are some great ones coming up right now, helping to champion that cause, and the more us as an industry shine a light to, listen, gold comes from the ground. So everything that you use, whether it's a smartphone, a computer, whether you're literally doing crypto mining, if you want to do crypto mining, you have to actually mine first. So passing along that message to young people is a bit of work, because you're fighting against a system that's working against you. There's an entire education system that really is more of an indoctrination system rather than actual critical thinking or education that's been going on for quite some time. So you're fighting an uphill battle to get people to really realize this disconnect between what is reality and what is true. So that's a long-winded way of saying we've got a lot of work to do. I don't know if you can convince like a millennial. Like some of them get it, obviously, but the media and the propaganda out there is so heavy, some are just going to not want to hear it. And I always liken this to, I live in Vancouver. This is a very leftist city and a province in a leftist country. And I love nature. I mean, I've always windsurfed. I used to row. I like hiking. So I immediately challenge someone if they start talking about the environment. I say, oh, well, if you love the environment, you must love mining. So you can imagine their heads spin around at 3 million times. They lose their minds. And even when I walk through it with them and say, listen, if you believe that carbon is the problem, every solution, well, just about every solution, comes from mining. It's going to come from silver going into solar panels. It's going to go for bits of gold into your cell phone. Of course, the battery energy metal story. Even telling them that, they have a hard time connecting those dots. And that, even still, without naming names, I've talked to clean tech, green tech companies, and even some politicians that when you even tell them that, they're well aware of that, but they just don't want to associate with it. And it's that kind of PR reality that annoys me, because it isn't that people just don't know. They just are like, oh, let's just not talk about that.
Yeah, some great points there. Okay, well, let's move on and talk about some jurisdictions within the junior mining space and how a lot of money is going into such places as the Golden Triangle and Nevada. It appears as though a lot of smart money is coming back to invest in these more traditional jurisdictions that have a history of success within the gold space. So is this a good thing in your mind, Andrew? And I imagine it'll only lead to more M&A activity within the gold space if there is more success.
I think it's great. Some of the deals that came through in the last couple of weeks were quite the talk of the town in London, with pretty strong opinions. But that's good, because it's news, and it starts to build some momentum. And I believe that this year, I think it's 348 deals worth over $30 billion. So there's been quite a bit of M&A activity. I kind of said at the beginning of the year that I thought this year would be huge. You have some names that are still kind of in the wings there. You always hear about Pretium. Maybe there's some action there going to happen. Pure Gold comes up as maybe there's something there before the end of the year. Who knows? Certainly China Gold International, which is a company that I like. We're after IAM Gold last month, and there was some interest there and a lot of news about that. So I see that there's next year is going to be very similar. And like I was saying, like a company like China Gold, which is beaten up pretty hard. This is a company from 2008 to 2018 had 31% annualized revenue growth, has a book value of like $3.28 and trades at $1.10. I mean, there's some big companies out there that are producing, have revenue, and are not having any attention put on them. You also have someone like Amir Adnani, who's exceptionally well known for uranium, who's quietly amassed something like 10.5 million ounces of measured and indicated, 12.4 million ounces of gold resources in the ground in the Americas in gold mining. So there's people out there that have been quietly picking up a lot of property. And with that one, with gold mining, I look at that as just, it's gold in the ground. It's kind of like a vault. You just haven't gotten it yet. So once we do our job, and I look at this is my job, is to be a lobbyist or an advocate or a big voice to say, listen, there's a lot of actual assets and actual value out there. And one of the things I like to kind of harp on is, going back a bit, is that there's U.S. corporate debt has grown by like 50% since the last crisis in 2008, somewhere around $10 trillion. And Netflix alone borrows a couple billion a quarter of debt, junk debt, and they make TV shows and basically have it's Jumbo Video or Blockbuster Video, old videos that they put on there. That's a bit cruel and mean to Netflix, but really people seem to be okay with that, to lend them Netflix money. But at the same time, you say, well, here's a copper company, or here's a silver company, or a lithium company that's actually creating all of the technology you use and providing this electrification of the future, and that's not exciting you. This disconnect amazes me. So I think that we're going to see a lot more interest in the next year. And part of that is just people will see an opportunity to make money. And unfortunately, you have to look at the money first, and then the retail starts to catch up after. And I think once the banks are convinced, the family offices and some of the funds start to see a flow of funds and they see activity, they're going to show some interest. And back to kind of scalable in size, something like, if Apple loses $1 billion, that's not news. Or if they gain $1 billion, it's not news. However, if you drop $1 billion into the junior exploration market in Canada, that is a massive move, and that is huge news. So it doesn't take a lot for this market to go. And when it goes, people start to remember a lot of the good old days when you do get a run, and those can last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And it wouldn't be just a craze, because the fundamentals as to why we need to mine are there. If you want solar power, if you want any of these things, Tesla, battery energy metals, e-boats, e-scooters, all of this, if you want this future, then let's have a say in it. Let's have put your money to the cause, and also do it in safe jurisdictions where there are good regulations, fair regulations, where everyone has a say in them, and and especially and importantly, taking care of the environment in a safe way, which we do in the West. People think that mining in, say, BC is the exact as mining in the Congo. It's not the same thing in any way, shape, or form. So I think it's just education. I think it's opportunity. And when people see that mix of those two things come together, we'll see a big, big move.
Well, let's go over a big win that you've had in the market and perhaps understand why it occurred. Learning from your losses is important, but I think it'd be interesting to talk about what you learned from a big win. Were there catalysts that kept you in the stock?
Yeah, so my big obvious one is Great Bear. Now, I came in a little bit late compared to some people, but I came in about $1.89. I think I got my report or article up, it might have been $2.10 or somewhere around there. But that one has been a great position for me, and I like it because it fit my model anyway. It was a strong management team, a strong financial backing and support behind the scenes, but mainly it was they're hitting milestones. I look to position into movement rather than all or nothing or anything. So they constantly were hitting different milestones and promises, keeping promises that they were making. And that is the way to build a position, is that management is doing their job and constantly hitting news. Their chart up until recently, it had a run up to $9 and came back down, which of course one should do as well, because you're going to want to take some profits. I still love the company. I think there's lots more excitement coming from it. But it's just a perfect chart of a run up, a little pull back down, a run up, a pull back down. And that's what you want to see. They're hitting targets. They're building up a resource. They're creating a big story, and there's lots of volume. That one, it's a very clear, good indicator of a successful story, not only as a chart, but it fundamentally as well. So that one is that kind of dream situation where you look and you go, this is what I mean by pairing into a position. This is great. So we'll see what happens in the new year. I believe they just raised $13 million to expand a very aggressive drill program moving forward, and I'm obviously very excited to see what happens with it. But that is that's a beautiful one to look at. And I was pleased to not only work with them, but be involved in it.
Excellent. Okay, as we begin to wrap up, Andrew, are there any books that you would recommend to our listeners regarding investing and speculating within the markets? And is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, I'm a fundamental guy, right? So I love Security Analysis by Graham and Dodd. I think that's one that people should always read. It's a tested classic. The other one, which is of definite need for today, is Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds by Charles Mackay, or McKay. That one, we constantly go through these bubbles and people think that it won't happen again. The debt bubble that's about to burst. I mean, these buybacks that you see from big FANG stocks. This is a great book, so people can see that how crazy things can get and that seem rational at the time, but are completely irrational. There's two books too that I love that are a bit funnier. One's called Bombardiers by Poe Bronson, and the other is, of course, Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis. Those two are definitely fun books you could read very quickly, but they're definitely exciting kind of fun books to take a peek at. The other thing that I just would leave with is that I'm pretty excited with what's happening over here at Supercharged Stocks. It's been a great year, and I'm trying to branch out into like esports as well, and maybe some health things. But anything that has to do with helping to create a better future along this clean, environmentally friendly kind of approach is what I like. So, like another company I like is this Xro Technology, which is a power conversion company. Things like that, where you're trying to amplify and provide solutions, to problems that are out there in the market is what I like. Just people complaining that we live in a tough world, it doesn't do it for me. As I like people coming up, and especially companies that come up, put some money out and say, listen, we're actually solving a problem. And that is sorely needed in the space, especially as far as media is concerned. So I think there's a lot of exciting things happening. There's a lot of like big stories that I think in the next year. One that I don't mind kind of stepping out in front of is Juggernaut, who I love their team. I love the position they're in right now, although they've had some ups and downs in the last year. They just signed an agreement with Bob Dickinson, and I'm sure everyone can go look up Bob Dickinson. I think he's found something like 15 mines. So they've got a partnership with him. And knowing from going to London and Mines and Money and 1-to-1 that their gold standard property left people pretty speechless. So I think there's something there for someone who wants to take a swing. Like, it's a big speculative exploration story that if you like that kind of risk, it's pretty exciting. And the other thing, that I wanted to mention is talking about younger people coming up, because I think that's always important, is both Andrew Nelson from G&A Financial Advisors and also Daniel Barankin and Bianca Pesciola from 6IX. They're involved in that Save Canadian Mining, which is an incredible cause that one should look into. They're doing that with Eric Sprott and Rob McEwen. So that is also another fantastic couple young people that are really trying to help shift millennials and younger people into the market.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Andrew. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Think you understand the junior mining sector, and you think that the participants in the mining sector, junior mining sector, are good people and kind people, hit the bid.
How violent that term could be, it actually could be quite violent. It could be a rip your face off uranium rally.
And the world is always going to need raw materials. It's going to need copper and gold and nickel and so forth.
Totally destabilized. Hey, Troll, did you hear what's going on in Yemen?